Okay, we're good to go? All right, well, welcome to everyone to a February 4th edition of the LTAC Committee. Looks like we have everybody here, minus Ms. McCullough. First thing we have is approval of the agenda. It's a pretty light agenda, but we do need a formal approval of the agenda if anyone would like to do so or has any changes.
I approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All the minutes were emailed from our last meeting ahead of this meeting, and you also, I believe, have it in your packet here. Any questions, thoughts, or motions to approve the minutes? Approved, second. I'm assuming there's no discussion? Yep, so, yeah, you'll have to see the green button.
I move that we approve the minutes.
I second.
You can move that closer to you, too, if that's, let me just pull it, yeah. All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. It's time for public comment. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to comment, now is your time. Going once, going twice. We've received nothing emailed, I'm assuming. Okay. So no action items. This is more of a casual discussion about the application. I know there were some concerns from the last go around, and maybe we can make this a little more efficient. As a heads up, we do have 1 hour because there's a council meeting tonight. So I know someone had to leave by 4. We're going to be done by 4. And if we're not done by 4, we can always look at having a subcommittee. And with a subcommittee, that can be kind of done not here, but in a different environment. So the two items for discussion really are one and the same, and that's going over the application. I had put together just some thoughts, but I didn't know if anyone had any ideas on what to do with the application, if there's things we want to add, subtract, modify the questions. I'm going to just kind of open it, and if anyone has any thoughts, this is the time to discuss them. And everyone did get there were some examples from others that were emailed. Everyone did receive that. Okay. So I open up to anyone who has any thoughts. Margaret?
I reviewed the examples that were given, and I don't know if you all read through them, but some of them are very lengthy and very confusing. One of them had a different scoring for every different type of application that came in, which I thought would be a real headache. Some just said that only 501c3, C6s, and government agencies could apply. Others said everybody can apply, so I think we just accept everybody for ours, don't we?
Well, we go through the RCWs. And if I remember, do you want to go over the RCWs real quick? And I believe they're on our website, but I don't think they're on the physical application itself.
There has been guidance too from the MRSC that basically it's pretty broad, and the RCWs actually don't say only nonprofits. So.
Correct. The one thing that's a no-no is you can't be for profit and use it for infrastructure capital expenses. Correct. Yeah, you couldn't own the movie theater and use this to add on a second theater. So, but it is intentionally broad, which in some ways is good, but in some ways makes our job a little more difficult.
Also, when I was reading through things, one of the examples showed that we have a question, explain how the project has potential to increase overnight stays in Oak Harbor. And it doesn't necessarily mean overnight stay when they're here to go to an event. It also could mean overnight stay in the future, meaning they came, they liked the place, they came 50 miles, they attended for the day, but they're going to come back another day and spend the night. I like that idea that, it didn't have to be totally correlated with an overnight stay for the event.
And not everyone who applies is applying with an event as well.
so that kind of, so some of the questions, it's hard when you know somebody's applying for just marketing, and then like question number 2, explain how the project has potential to increase overnight stays. Well, if it's marketing, I suppose that could show potential, but it's not necessarily what the actual meaning of what your grant was about. It was to let everybody know about the city and what what happens here.
Would it be helpful if we just kind of went over each question one by one to kind of add some structure to it? Okay. Yeah. Is your microphone on?
No. I did go over, though, the starting suggestions and discussion topics and items to consider. And those were some good suggestions. And getting it to the 100 points as opposed to 150, those are some ways that we can make that happen. So,
And we currently are at 100 points. It's the county that's at 150.
Oh, okay.
And these are just my thoughts I gave ahead of time just to give a little structure to it. To me, 100, I think of that as
Is
a percentage. You know, so let's go ahead and start with question 1. Describe the marketing and promotion plan of the project. Specify how the proposed marketing and promotion plan will reach visitors 50 plus miles away or coming from another state or country. Do we like that question? Do we have any thoughts on that question?
No, that's a good question.
I think that's fine as
Yes.
stated.
I think it should stay. That's a good one.
Question 2, explain how the project has the potential to increase overnight stays in Oak Harbor.
That's exactly the design of the program, yes.
And definitely Oak Harbor. As we went through the last application, I felt like there were some things we like, ooh, we have people from, Green Bank applying and stuff, and that can make it, this is Oak Harbor specific. So question 3, explain how funding the project will provide an economic investment and general benefit to the city. I kind of put some notes, but happy to hear any other thoughts.
I actually agree with your note, wording it into one question. Being my first time, I found it very confusing to kind of understand and stuff. So I think making it into one question would be better.
I agree, and it will also be more helpful for scoring. That was an interesting one to try to score to hear. So one question, I agree, but keep it at 10.
Any suggestions on how to word it? In my mind, and maybe I'm just thinking because I'm at the city a lot, when explain how the project will provide economic investment, I've always interpreted that as how will it help the community. You have a street fair that's downtown on Pioneer that can help with economic investment on Pioneer. And I saw, and general benefit to the city, I kept going back and forth, is that general benefit to the city of Oak Harbor as an organization or the city as a whole? And if it's the city as a whole, they kind of seem very similar to me. But we'll need to work out what that new question could look like.
Yeah, I mean, the economic investment to the city could be the fact that they're staying in a hotel, or they're grabbing a burger at some place or food somewhere else, not necessarily where the actual venue of the event was. So to me, economic investment in the community as a whole, I mean.
I agree, you need to work the word community
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
Provide economic investment and benefit to the community.
Should we say
The
to?
Oak Harbor community.
I was gonna say to the benefit of Oak Harbor.
Yeah, yeah. And then that brings
Or
another
community
question
of
too,
Oak
as
Harbor.
you said earlier, people were applying and they're not even in Oak Harbor.
Yeah.
Should there be some sort of a rule that you don't apply for an Oak Harbor LTAC if you're not in Oak Harbor? If your event's not in Oak Harbor? I mean, I don't know if the RCW say anything about that.
So I don't believe the RCW say anything.
They don't, and I think some of the examples I sent you, you can see, well, and just doing the research I did, like Anacortes, their LTAC will give money to the Tulip Festival. That doesn't happen in Anacortes, but it benefits them. There's other cities that I provided the examples that were very specific, that it had to happen within the city limits. So I think it's up to you guys how you want to structure it.
It very much, and that could be made. I mean, we have some that have applied, like the one that, the Meerkat Gardens, they've applied for this grant, at least since I've been here, and kind of gotten awarded. So it's a major change for them if we were to say no, not to say we can't. I personally would not be for the city of Oak Harbor, just the city limits. As I mentioned, the Renaissance Fair is going to be happening in Oak Harbor, which is wonderful, right outside of city limits. A program like this is like tailor-made for something like that, but they're right outside city limits. Same thing with the airport we have, that we did the car show. Well, that would then be ineligible if we said city limits. So we could say Oak Harbor, or we could leave it a little more vague, and that's a decision that is up for us to decide.
Well, if you have an address in Oak Harbor, I mean, I don't live in Oak Harbor. I live outside of Oak Harbor because I live off of Swan Town, where the Renaissance Fair is going to be. So, I mean, Oak Harbor is, there's more than just a city limit. I mean, the Navy base is are they in the city limit even? I suppose they are. I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
I consider Oak Harbor from like Deception Pass to just to where the like maybe Libby Road-ish about there is what I consider Oak Harbor. So I would kind of have, then out by West Beach, of course, and then Element Acres or whatever is that way, is what I would consider maybe naming Oak Harbor in this type of paperwork here.
And I like the idea of Oak Harbor being named on question 3. And Wendy, I assume you took notes on what the question, how would this explain how the project will benefit the community of Oak Harbor, something like that.
Or you could say North Whidbey. Well, I mean,
So I'm just thinking, how would it benefit the community of Oak Harbor? That doesn't necessarily mean that someone outside of Oak Harbor couldn't apply for it. It just means if we're all on the same page, you'd likely get a 0 on that particular question. You could have something in Green Bank, but you're going to have a hard time making an argument that it benefits Oak Harbor. That doesn't mean you can't apply. It just means your scoring is going to go down because here's a question that you're likely going to get a 0 or a low score. But everyone scores subjectively,
I like the wording of how it could benefit the community of Oak Harbor, because that gives it a more broad, generalized term that I think could be interpreted to include the city, but also the surrounding area that does benefit the city.
Okay. Got enough? Did you have enough to go there on that question? Yep. And even though we're making these decisions, we're not technically voting. I'm assuming that we're going to be going over at the next cycle, the application right before the cycle like we do every year.
yes.
That's-
And I guess on this one too, when you said you wanted to combine it into one question, would you like to get rid of the 5 points for economic investment and 5 points for the benefit and just make it 10 points total? And then you can rate 1 to 10? Okay.
Okay, moving on to question 4. Describe the project activity, including a timeline of events with all important dates. I had only suggested moving that up to the first question because that kind of sets the stage for the application, but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
I agree with that. It should be at the top because it does set the stage.
I agree, yeah.
I agree, because then it goes with the flow of the whole application. Right now, it kind of sits amongst the financial part, where it could be at the beginning explaining what the proposal.
If we're gonna move 4 towards the front, we should move 5 as well, because it's all about the shoulder season. So if you want a timeline of the event with dates, 5 is right there with it.
I agree. Are we okay with that question? I mean, moving it, but are we okay with the question being like it is and with 10 points?
We
I'm
might
okay
want
with
to
it.
add some clarification what the shoulder season is, because a lot of people might not know what that is.
Well, I'm just referring to question 4 right now. Question, I'm sorry, yeah, question 5. Nope. So just question 4. I apologize.
I'm okay with the points.
I agree.
I think that's fine.
So then going on to question 5, which then could be moved up. My suggestion was, this one's tricky because I understand, and this is where it'd be nice to have those in the hotel industry kind of weigh in. On the one hand, I think that the question should be there, but I suggested the points be reduced only because you think of something like the music festival, instantly not shoulder season. You're either getting a 0 or you're being kind to giving them like 2 because there's marking outside the shoulder season. And I don't know how big of a deal it is from a hotel perspective to specifically market outside of the shoulder season. That's something that we could use a little input on.
It's huge. That's one of the largest events of the year. I mean, even Ragnar and the Whidbey Island Marathon in the last couple of years, we've seen people come, they run the race, and then they leave the island. Music festival's huge.
In music festival, by this scoring, I mean, it's instantly knocked down to 85. Just even if they did everything else right. And it gets tricky when we're looking at the scoring, if we're doing a percentage based on score, as opposed to a ranked order, which we switch back and forth. It does make it a little tricky sometimes.
Well, that's also the last big event of the year. I mean, unless Hydroplanes decides to move till the second weekend of September, the music festival's the last big event of the year before everything goes quiet.
So I guess the question is, I had suggested reducing from 15 points to 5 points, so it's still on there. You still get something, being that it would be on that shoulder season. But I don't know if we should keep the question, I think. But do we want to keep the points 15, or do we want to reduce it? What are everyone's thoughts?
I would reduce it to 5. Because there's, if you want to do a great event and you want it good weather, it's not going to be in the shoulder seasons. I mean, if you have a street event, it's got to be when the weather's nice. And so why are you getting penalized for having it off out of the shoulder season?
I agree, and I think 5 points is fine. So say the music festival doesn't get the full points for that question, it's only a knock of 5.
I also agree.
So just for clarification too, we've defined in that question that the shoulder season is actually October through May. So the music festival actually does qualify for, no, you're right, they're not in the shoulder season. Yeah.
Is that typically what the shoulder season is considered? I don't know. That's more of like a hotel. I mean, is that what the shoulder season is considered? Is this an RCW or is this something that we kind of just decided?
Yeah, I'm curious if it lists that in the RCW. It has for primary purpose for LTEC is for the shoulder season. I don't think it does it?
I'm looking at it right now, so give me a couple minutes.
So I'm reading this as, so it'd be June, July, August, September. To me, those feel like mostly summer months. I think that's probably the thought process. So we'll keep moving and then. True. So we'll keep going as Wendy's looking it up. So question 6. Please provide attachments of previous year post-project requirements, attendance data, and explain how that information was collected. For new applicants, explain how you obtain the data at the end of the project. This one I kind of wrestled with, so I'm happy to hear any thoughts. This is kind of how are you going to get the data to prove that it was this successful event is how it boils down to me. But what do we think?
Well, and that's true because like the music festival, there is no way to track the 4,000 people that are down there. I mean, there's no way. I mean, you'd have to gate it and track everybody as they walk through the gate.
Well, I know that Embrace has a certain program whereby your cell phone pings, and they can determine who's down there. But I don't know if you can't determine, is that person there at this time and not there at that time, or if they're there the whole time. I mean, I don't know how you even figure out how many people come. I mean, we sit there sometimes and try to, count, or, different times during the day, but you don't know if it's the same people. It's, I don't know.
It's a little, I'm going to put my other hat on. I'm chair of the Embrace board as well. So, yeah, we have a program called Datafy, which, I'll be honest, we need to do a little bit better job of advertising, and we do pay a considerable amount to get cell phone data. And you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt. How it works right now is if you come to the island and it's your first time on the island, we have data that will show that. The problem is if you're somebody who comes to the island often, and you just happen to come for the music festival as well, we kind of filter that out. So it's data, it's good data. It's not always great data, but it tracks credit cards. I mean, it tracks a lot. So places like the music festival, that is one of the resources they use. But a lot of large events is also kind of almost like on the honor system in a way. Like nobody does some sort of pre-registration or something like that, but it is hard to get the exact numbers. But they are required to report it. So I don't know if we want to modify this question, change the points, reword it.
Yeah, I think, most people respond with a guesstimate. I mean, there's nothing really accurate about it unless you're selling tickets. That's the only way you would know if, how many people we had. But all the street fairs and stuff, they're not ticketed events. Marathon, they would know how many people came to run, but not how many other people were there that attended with them. So I think it's a hard number to pin down. I mean, I think it's important that people try to explain how they guesstimate, or how they figured out, oh, I think this amount of many people came. Maybe that's an important thing, that because they are thinking about it, and they are trying to compare this year with last year, and see if they're doing better or doing worse. So I mean, it's not a bad question. It's just that I don't know how specific you can be.
So part of the rough part is, and I've talked to Cynthia about this, is they always want to know if the hotels were sold out over that weekend. And we normally are. But I can guarantee you that most of the people that check in over that weekend, if you ask them they're here for the music festival, they're like, what music festival? I didn't know there was a music festival. So you can't just go off whether or not the hotels are full. I mean, I have relatives that live in Concrete. They come down, they go to it, and then they go home. So you can't track it just by asking us at the hotel if we had a sold-out weekend.
Well, it's the last weekend of the year anyhow, and that's when everybody's traveling before they buckle down for school and work.
I just want to say, as someone filling out the application, that was the hardest question. It was to justify how we got our data. Did people come just for the weekend? Did they come, their family flew in to come and see them in the show and stayed? And how do you judge how far someone came? Getting zip codes, we tried that. It's a nebulous number. I think it's important to have a question like that to show that you are getting a draw of people here, but the whole how you're collecting the data part. Yep. It's the hardest part of the application, in my opinion, to validate.
Yeah, I could if you were filling out the application, I could see how it is. It's also probably, in some ways, the most important question because how you justify the LTAC grant. But Wendy, were you able to find out about that shoulder season? Just as we're
There's
skipping.
nothing in the RCW about that. And then just for this question.
Please.
This is specific because this is what we have to report to the JLARC every year. On those, the final form that everybody fills out, it says how many people came, how many people stayed overnight, how many, and those are state required questions that we have to report.
So if we change the question at all, we can't change the sustenance of the question. Just really a word or two. So we can just leave it like it is, if that's what everyone wants. We can change it, but we can't change it drastically.
I think we just leave it as it is then. There's not much we can do to really change it.
Okay. What about the Schultz? We're going.
So were we gonna change number 5? I mean, if there's nothing in the RCW that says shoulder season,
I think we just mentioned reducing it to 5 points, but we can eliminate it or switch with another question if that's what everyone wants to do. It seemed like it was on most applications, but yeah.
Maybe just drop the point value to 5.
I agree. Drop the point value, but we should still keep it.
Okay. Question 7, and I just put on my notes, should be swapped out with something more useful. But again, these are just my opinions. So question 7 is demonstrate the applicant's history of organizational and project success, not necessarily LTAC funded events. I didn't have any good ideas. I just didn't know if I liked the question. So
Maybe if they just put down, everybody just copies what they did from the year before and pastes it into that thing, and you're just reading ad nauseum on all this stuff. Maybe you put down, give us one demonstration of an accessible event that you're proud of, or accessible project or something. Just one that they're proud of that's happened in the past, instead of listing everything.
don't you think they'll still just copy and paste year after year?
and it is only a 5-point question, but if there's any other ideas, we're all ears.
Well, maybe you can add something to it that, so how does, demonstrate how this event meets your, whatever your mission statement is. I mean, if it has nothing to do with what your organization usually does, you just want to have a fun event, or, if it doesn't advertise or market what your mission is, then maybe it's not something that should be funded. I don't know. For a nonprofit, you always need to want to, reach out and do something that that actively promotes your mission. Like when I was with Main Street, that's what we would do. All of our events tried to promote people downtown, businesses downtown, and get people downtown. Now that I'm wearing the Music Fest hat, our mission is to have a fun event for people to come and enjoy music on all different kinds of, venues. So, how does, if somebody is doing, like the Garden Club, obviously their mission is to have garden stuff and garden lectures, and that meets their mission. I'm not sure, I don't know, maybe just to make it a little more information in that question instead of just a list of all your things you've ever done.
Could we put something like, demonstrate how your project's growth over the previous year or something like that? Show us how it's continuing to grow. If you keep coming back asking for money, show us how it's growing. What was your success? What is your growth rate year over year?
I like where you're going. It's just, what if it's a new event? Or what if it's for, let's say sometimes the city has applied for things like one year they applied for a new reader board. They didn't get it, but they did. They applied for it. I'm trying to think, how would somebody who's maybe not an event, how would they answer the question that would still make sense in the context of that application?
Well, it's kind of like when the city asks for a slide at the pool.
The pool asked for the slide.
Oh, the pool asked for a slide. My mistake. But even with that case, how does that make your growth? How do you see that growing your base attendance base in the following year? Yeah.
If you're new.
Yeah.
Because even if they're only asking for marketing funds for flyers or rack cards to put on the ferries and stuff, they could say that, with the funds last year, we were able to put rack cards on the ferries up in Bellingham, and it's brought in 200 more people to Oak Harbor.
How would this grant help to grow your event? Or if it's a new, but I kept trying to think for non-events though. That's my issue. Like if it's just events, I could see how it could be worded. I'm trying to think for non-events.
Well, the whole thing's on tourism. So how does your event increase tourism to Whidbey Island or to Oak Harbor? And how do you see that this will benefit future tourism? I mean, throw tourism in there somewhere.
I like it, but I'm trying to think of how that would differentiate from the economic value of the community. You're saying tourism, but I'm trying to figure out how that would differ.
I think we need them to show us how they're growing year over year, because we have the same people coming back doing the same event or the same marketing for the same grant year over year. But is it working? Are they growing? Are they progressing?
What about for a first time though? How do we word it then?
How would your project, because you're talking about not just tourism and things, not events, or let's say they needed, like how you mentioned, a reader board. Maybe they have a specific project they're trying to bring forth that might help out.
You could say, how is this project going to grow your organization? Even if it's a brand-new project that they've never done, how do they foresee this project to grow the organization that they have?
How will this grant help to grow your event or promote your brand in the future? Something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Any thoughts, Wendy? How do we make this sound not so clumsy? I feel it's on the tip of our tongue. I know what we're going for. It's just how do we phrase it in a sentence or two sentences?
That's what Dave does. All the time. But, I can wordsmith, I know what you are trying to go for.
You get the thrust.
Yes, and I'll wordsmith it and bring it back to you all, and you can see if that's what we were thinking. I wanted just to mention too, one of the other thoughts, I think in the last meeting was a question around how the organization was going to, I don't know if grow enough is the right word, but basically wean themselves off of LTAC. So they're not coming back year after year after year. But I don't know if that's a conversation you want to have.
Become self-sustaining.
Yes.
Well, that almost seems like a different, not that we couldn't have another question. That almost seems like a different question where what is your organization's plans to become self-sustaining or something like that?
Well, we do have to do something with that 10 points we took from question 5.
We do, and I had just mentioned putting on question 8, but that doesn't mean that we can't create an entirely new question. We certainly could. So question 7, I think, Wendy, you know where we're thinking, because this is going to be brought back to us. So we can go to question 8, and then we can tack a question on at the end. So question 8, all I had suggested was just change the score because I was looking for some place to put those points. I thought with question 8, to me, I always like knowing, will your event still happen if you don't get this money? And everyone's going to say, a lot of people are going to say, well, no, but that's the only reason why I had just suggested, because I really like to know how dependent are you on this, which almost seems opposite of the other thing that we were suggesting.
But that's why I like that new question, is because If you're saying you can't survive without it, do you have a plan to ever be able to survive without it?
So we could leave question 8 the way it is with the points and then do a question 9. That's a follow-up? Do you have a thought?
Yeah, if you do not receive funding from this grant, what will your event look like? Well, you'll have to pare something down, or you'll have to find funding somewhere else, because, most people are still go ahead with their event. They just are gonna have to have funding somewhere else.
Can you say that one more time? Just, I want to make sure Wendy gets that down, because that was good. How did you phrase it?
Oh, God.
Watch the tape.
Reel it backwards.
If you don't get the funding from LTAC, what will your event look like?
Yeah, if your organization does not receive, you gotta make it sound a little flowery. If your organization does not receive this grant, what would the impact be on your operations or something
Yeah.
of that nature?
Operation and organization, because of its marketing, it has to do with the organizations, letting people know about things. But also in number 7 too, I thought about, oh geez, sorry, I just forgot.
So then, if we do that, we could do a question 9 then, that would say, what is your organization's plan to be self-sustaining in the future, or what are we going for exactly?
Can we get rid of number 7 and make that number 7?
We
Because it's important that we know we have the same people apply year after year, which doesn't leave much room for new people to apply and do new projects, because we have the same big projects every year. See?
We certainly can replace that with number 7. We would just then, if I'm doing my math right, we'd have 5 points we'd have to put somewhere.
Instead of having 5 points on one of the earlier questions, just bump it up to 10.
I think the only one that that would be at 5 that we reduced was the shoulder season.
Okay.
But I like the way that we reworded number 7. My thought, I was with us when we were going for just adding another question 10, for 10 points, saying how are you going to become self-sufficient in the future as its own separate question. Something like that.
So replacing question 7,
Keep
keep
I
question
like the way
7,
it was reworded.
add question 9, which was having to do with how you'll be self-sufficient
Yes.
in the
And
future.
10 points.
Yeah. Got that? Okay. And then we have a little bit of time if anyone has any thoughts.
Question.
Yeah.
So, is there a time limit? I mean, do they ever have to actually get off LTAC funding? I mean, or do we support them for the rest of their life because they can't survive without us?
There's no RCW or requirement. I mean, that's just kind of been the culture. I mean, I look at, say, for example, the Whidbey Island Marathon. The Whidbey Island Marathon, if I'm correct, stop me if I'm not, it doesn't break even. It's supported.
Correct. Yeah, it does not break even, so far.
And I don't know if it will. And so that's something that probably will receive grants year after year unless we say no. It's a little difficult when you have new LTAC members come on, some come off, but there is no, they could apply year after year after year.
But by adding that question about how they're going to become self-sufficient, that will get people, that could change the culture, to get people aware of this is not something you will necessarily be on forever, and get them thinking, because you're going to have to answer that question. So you're going to have a conversation to come up with an answer for, exactly. Do you hear where I'm going?
And if you see the same answer year after year after year, you can say, well, wait a minute.
Well, it's like with the music festival, in order to keep growing and keep bringing entertainment always keeps going up. We were in a deficit at the end of last year by a substantial amount of money because we didn't raise enough funds and we didn't sell enough beer and all that kind of stuff. So even though you apply every year, I think you're still trying to make everything work out right so that you don't have to ask for so much. But you never know what the economy's going to do and what's going to happen. So I think that's why people continue to apply.
But there will be an impact now because there's the question. So if you're going on a weighted score as opposed to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're going on a weighted score and a percentage, it would possibly reduce the amount depending upon how we decide to score it. Not perfect, but step in the right direction. Is there any other things regarding the application that's not the scoring that anyone would like to go over or discuss? It's okay if not, but this is your opportunity. It is a fairly short application compared to some others I've seen. Not necessarily a bad thing. The only thing I saw on other RCWs that other applications I don't see on here are kind of the just brief. Oh no, it's on there on the last page. The RCWs and what it could be used for. Never mind.
Yeah, I don't know if, what?
It's a little hidden.
Yeah. I would like to make sure people know that it is for economic vitality as well as, it's not just heads and beds, it's economic vitality. What else do these projects bring to the city that the city can grow in other ways, like eating out and utilizing the park and doing other things besides just heads and beds, because heads and beds don't always, like, people come to the music festival, spend the day and then head home because, well, there's a place to stay to start with, and so people are trying to create events that will keep people to stay over, even though their event doesn't really need to be 2 days. 1 day would be plenty for that event. And now with the new rules and things with applications for events, that will affect people as well.
The only tricky thing with that, of course, is this is funded by the heads and beds.
Yeah.
I mean, the only way the LTAC is funded is by hotel stays. I don't think there's any other source of income that any LTAC gets besides hotels.
How do we raise that amount to like 3%? I mean, it's been 2% for like 20 years. I mean, everything else is growing, but the amount we're collecting to help fund these grants. So isn't there a way that we can, it's not like it comes out of the hotel's pocket, but, everything's going up but the 2%.
I don't think we can, except the 2% would go up as hotel costs go up, but
Yeah,
David Goldeman.
it's a sales tax that's collected on the rentals, the overnight rentals of hotel rooms. We don't control that. It's a state of Washington thing. So it's the 2% plus, it's actually 4%. It's what is it? It's 0.2% out of the 6.5 from the state, and then it's an additional 0.2% above that, so it's 0.4%. And that's what we're limited to. We don't control that locally, so.
So RCW, we couldn't make it 5% if we wanted to. No, city has no control. It's on a state level. I mean, logically, when I look like on my Embrace board and I look year over year, our budget gets, for example, the county gives us 1%. Our budget has gotten bigger and bigger as people have stayed more and costs of rooms and things have gone up more. So naturally, if you took the numbers that Embrace got from 2021, which was almost nothing because of COVID compared to now, it's gone up substantially. But we can't just change the percentage.
Is the entire state 2%?
Yes, it's in the RCW. There may be exceptions for like very large cities, and I think cities that adopted this before the RCW went in place, who may have had higher rates, maybe they're grandfathered in, but that doesn't apply to most cities. So, yeah.
Good question. Any other questions or thoughts on the application? No need to draw it out, but this is the time if you have anything.
I just have a statement. When reviewing the applications and people's P&Ls and stuff, I've looked at a number of them over the years, and a number of them make a substantial profit at the end of the year. And so I'm thinking, why are they applying if their bottom line is substantially in the black and not in the red? It doesn't say that you have to, that one question about what will you do if you don't get the money, or do you expect to have LTAC support all the time? Maybe that would weed out some of those people that actually really don't need the money.
And I think that's all we can do is, because anyone can apply that follows the RCW, which is pretty loose. We can't stop someone from applying. I guess it's just us being diligent in taking those factors into account. I hate to say people go after free money, but let's be honest, it does happen. So. Anything else? Going once? Going twice? All right. Well, Wendy will put some of this suggestions together. When we get to our next cycle, we'll go ahead and, like we do every year, go over the application one more time. We normally do that cycle, around September-ish? September, October?
Yes, yeah, I think maybe late August. We'll just see how people's schedules. We'll have an idea of how much money we have available to spend, so that'll go to the council first, and then we'll call you guys together to probably September.
Well, thank you for everyone for giving up some of your time. And
Question.
yeah,
Did last year get approved? Did I miss the email? How do we know if the city accepted our recommendations?
Yes, it was taken to the council, I believe, I apologize, I think it might have been the first meeting in November, and the council approved the allotments that you guys recommended.
if I remember correctly, it was not a unanimous vote. It was a split vote, which is not uncommon. It did pass, but it was not a unanimous pass. But we'll make sure that everyone gets an email or something to follow up. We try to email people when the meeting is, so everyone can come watch it, but I understand not everyone wants to spend 3 hours watching a meeting. But we can certainly do a follow-up email to let people know how it goes. If it had not gone, they would have sent it back to us, and we would have had to reevaluate it. So, yeah. All right. With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Let's go.